Have you ever been in a relationship where everything seemed perfect? Deep conversations, mutual attraction, shared dreams, only to watch him suddenly pull away emotionally? Or perhaps even worse, he stayed physically present while his heart seemed miles away? That feeling of confusion, that question that keeps you awake at night. What truly makes a man fall deeply in love? What creates that unbreakable connection beyond initial attraction or comfortable routine? Most women believe love grows from consistent effort, from showing care, interest, and devotion. While these elements matter, there's something far more powerful at work beneath the surface. The most profound insight from depth psychology reveals something surprising. True love doesn't begin with what you do. It begins in the unconscious mind. What genuinely awakens deep love in a man isn't always visible or logical. It's not found in your actions or words. It lives in what you unconsciously represent to him. It's that quiet energy you radiate when you stop trying to please everyone around you, when you simply exist as your authentic self. And here's the fascinating paradox. The moment you release your attachment to being chosen, you become absolutely unforgettable. This isn't mystical thinking, it's psychological reality. When someone falls deeply in love, they're not just connecting with who you are on the surface. They're responding to what you awaken within their inner landscape. There was a moment when he looked at you and saw more than just another person. He saw something that both challenged and magnetized him simultaneously. Have you experienced this? Has someone returned to your life after a long absence without any logical explanation? Has someone remembered tiny details about you years later? If so, share your experience in the comments, because these moments reveal something profound about human connection that most people never recognize. The greatest irony in love is this. Men don't fall deeply for what they can easily understand or control. They fall for what they can't fully comprehend, for what disrupts their emotional framework. When a woman lives authentically in her truth, when she refuses to compromise her essence out of fear of rejection, something transformative happens. Her presence becomes magnetic without any conscious effort to attract. Yet many women make the critical mistake of abandoning their authenticity, trying desperately to become what they believe he wants. That's precisely when the connection begins to fade, not because love is absent, but because the mysterious energy that ignited it has disappeared. Psychology teaches us that what we suppress eventually shapes our destiny. When a woman represses her true nature, her energy no longer resonates at the soul level. What's fascinating is that he often can't explain why he keeps thinking about her, why her image appears in his dreams, or why, even after walking away, her memory lingers like a melody he can't forget. This happens because when a woman unknowingly embodies qualities he hasn't yet integrated within himself, she becomes a mirror reflecting parts of his psyche he's never fully explored. And no one forgets the person who first showed them glimpses of their own hidden depths. The profound truth is that we don't connect with others simply for who they are as individuals. We connect with what they represent to our unconscious mind. When a woman naturally embodies something that resonates with a man's deeper self, she activates a pull far stronger than physical attraction. She touches something ancient within him, awakening emotional memories he didn't even know he carried. A man might encounter countless women throughout his lifetime. Some bring laughter into his world. Some offer support during difficult times. Some might share years of his life journey. But there's always one who continues resonating within him long after their paths diverge. Surprisingly, she's rarely the most conventionally beautiful or the most flawless. She's almost always the woman who never tried to be anything but herself. The one who carried herself with quiet confidence and inner certainty. The one who chose self-respect over external validation, who prioritized her own well-being without guilt or apology. That woman, without realizing it, becomes a symbolic figure in his psychological landscape, representing aspects of himself he has yet to fully embrace. When she enters his world, something within him awakens. But here's what's most interesting. Many women never recognize when they're playing this transformative role. They don't see their impact because they're not doing anything deliberately extraordinary. They're simply existing authentically, connected to their essence. This genuine authenticity creates a profound disruption for a man who has only experienced relationships built on superficial connection or performance-based affection. In that moment, He doesn't fall for her physical appearance or clever conversation. He falls for what she reflects back to him. Parts of himself he's never fully explored, but that suddenly begins stirring to life. This explains why some men retreat precisely when they start feeling something genuine. Not because they don't care, but because something deep within recognizes that this woman is fundamentally different. If they remain, they'll need to transform, to surrender control, to open themselves to aspects of their emotional world long kept dormant. Often they're simply not prepared for this inner revolution. The feelings she activates are too intense, too alive, too uncontrollable. They can't categorize or manage these emotions. So they withdraw, not from her specifically, but from the internal transformation her presence has initiated. This is why it's crucial that you don't interpret this retreat as personal rejection. If you've ever experienced someone pulling away and couldn't understand why their absence created such a profound emptiness, perhaps it wasn't simply unrequited affection. Perhaps you were the mirror reflecting aspects of himself he wasn't ready to face. I'm curious, have you ever felt someone withdraw not because of anything you did, but because of what you represented? Was it difficult to make sense of their reaction? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might help countless others currently experiencing similar confusion. When a woman stops actively pursuing love and instead fully inhabits her authentic self, her energetic presence transforms completely. This isn't about developing pride or indifference. It's about embodying a quiet inner strength that communicates without words. I belong to myself first. This self-possession creates both a powerful invitation and a profound challenge to the masculine psyche. Psychology reveals that what we haven't integrated within ourselves, we unconsciously seek in others. When a man encounters a woman embodying qualities he hasn't developed, emotional freedom, intuitive wisdom, authentic depth, something within him awakens, often uncomfortably. Sometimes his initial reaction isn't attraction, but discomfort. Why? Because she reflects back the empty spaces within himself he's avoided confronting. Perhaps throughout his life, he's gravitated toward relationships where he could play the protector, the authority, the one in control. But now, faced with a woman who doesn't require rescuing, who doesn't place him on a pedestal, who isn't desperate for his validation, he feels completely disarmed. This disorientation often sparks obsession, not with her as a person, but with restoring the illusion of control her presence has disrupted. He doesn't consciously recognize that what he's actually pursuing isn't her at all. It's the repair of his fractured self-image. This explains why some men, after losing connection with such a woman, cannot truly release her memory. Months or even years pass, yet they carry her in their thoughts like an unhealed wound. It's not simple heartbreak. She represents a fundamental turning point in their emotional development, a clear division between before and after. The challenge is that many men don't know how to address this internal void. They haven't learned to look inward and take responsibility for their emotional development. Instead, they look outward, to new relationships, increased work, endless distractions. Yet nothing fills the space she left behind, because what departed wasn't merely a person but a catalyst for potential transformation. Here's what most people fail to recognize. This woman remains unforgettable not because she was perfect, but because she was authentic. Because she departed when she recognized that staying would require betraying herself. Because she didn't create dramatic scenes or desperate pleas. She simply closed the door with quiet dignity. This rare display of self-respect leaves an indelible impression on the masculine psyche, a lesson never forgotten. To those listening who recognize themselves in this description, have you ever felt your self-respect was misinterpreted as emotional coldness? Has your silence been mistaken for disinterest when it actually represented your commitment to honoring yourself? If so, please share your experience below. Someone out there needs to understand that walking away isn't giving up. It's preserving your essential self. The unconscious mind doesn't distinguish between literal reality and symbolic meaning. When a woman becomes a psychological symbol in a man's inner world, she transcends being merely a person. She becomes an archetype, a resonance, a reflection. And no one forgets the mirror that first showed them their own hidden depths. After losing connection with her, many men believe they miss her physical presence or specific shared experiences. But what truly creates that lingering ache is disconnection from the feeling she awakened within them. that unique blend of admiration, fascination, and desire that defies logical explanation. When a connection touches the soul, no rational closure ever feels complete. In her absence, his unconscious mind works with relentless intensity, replaying conversations, remembering gestures, idealizing moments. Yet none of this recaptures the original feeling, because he's not actually searching for her. He's attempting to return to the internal state he could only access through her presence. This reality is simultaneously beautiful and heartbreaking. The more he tries to recreate her through memory, the further he moves from the genuine opportunity for growth. Looking inward to ask, what aspects of myself were awakened by her presence? What emotional void was revealed when she departed? The woman who refuses to compete for attention, who doesn't beg to be chosen, who doesn't desperately cling to a fading connection, embodies something revolutionary to the masculine mind. She doesn't represent conventional romance or the accommodating partner. She represents authentic freedom. And while this freedom may initially hurt, it ultimately fascinates, because deep down, we all seek liberation, though few are willing to love from that liberated space. Through this process, a man unknowingly begins his journey towards psychological integration. This path doesn't typically begin with sudden insight, but with significant loss. Sometimes all it takes is a single look, a goodbye without blame, a door quietly closed, to collapse a man's entire internal framework. Yet within that collapse exists not just pain but possibility, because only when old structures fall can something new finally emerge. Perhaps that's what leaves the deepest impression, that she didn't force connection, didn't fight against natural endings, but understood something essential. Authentic connection never requires force. The deepest love is never begged for. It is honored through mutual recognition. I want to ask you honestly, have you ever needed to walk away from someone who couldn't recognize your true worth? Did you choose self-respect despite the pain it caused? If so, please share your experience in the comments. Your story might provide healing perspective to more people than you could imagine. In the solitude following the departure of a self-aware woman, a quiet transformation begins within him. Initially, he attempts to overcome these feelings as he always has, through distraction, replacement, denial. But something feels different this time. Nothing fills the emptiness. Nothing eases the discomfort. Because this wasn't merely another ending. It was an internal awakening. Psychology identifies certain pivotal moments in our development, times when life forces us to confront what we've been avoiding. For many men, the woman who departed quietly, without drama or explanations, becomes one of those turning points. Not because she intended to cause pain, but because her absence revealed a truth no one else had shown him. Suddenly, he begins asking questions he never considered before. Why did her presence feel so essential? Why did her departure hurt so deeply, even if our connection was brief? What part of myself was I seeking through her? Within these questions, his self-image begins to transform. He's no longer the man who maintains complete control, no longer the one immune to deep attachment, no longer the one who leads every emotional exchange. Now he stands as a vulnerable human being touched by a connection more profound than any he's experienced before, a connection that has fundamentally changed him. Though this transformation creates confusion, it also awakens something vital within. What this woman represented through her quiet autonomy, her loving but unattached presence, her authentic self-expression, was something he had yet to discover within himself. She didn't arrive to provide stability. She appeared to reveal how unstable his internal foundation actually was. And this revelation, painful as it might be, marks the beginning of genuine awakening. Many men initially resist this process. They want to return to familiar patterns. They want to forget, to suppress, to bury these feelings. But the soul doesn't operate according to convenience. Once it has been touched, there's no returning to previous limitations. And so, within this discomfort, some choose a different path, to pause, to breathe, to look inward. They begin exploring, reflecting, questioning patterns from childhood, past relationships, behaviors repeated without awareness. They examine their need for external validation, their fear of abandonment, their difficulty loving without control. Gradually, they recognize that she wasn't the problem. The distorted expectations they projected onto her were the actual issue. This moment represents a critical turning point, the possibility of no longer seeking externally what can only be developed within. Over time, the wound begins healing, not through denial but through acceptance, through the humility of recognizing that love transcends possession. To those listening who recognize this experience, perhaps you've been misunderstood, your departure interpreted as coldness when it actually represented your soul choosing peace. If this resonates with you, please share your perspective in the comments. Your insight could provide the reflection someone else desperately needs today. As time passes, something shifts within him, not dramatically through external events, but quietly, almost imperceptibly. A new way of seeing emerges. He no longer searches for her in other people. He no longer chases her memory. He begins understanding what actually transpired. Psychology teaches that personal growth begins when we stop identifying with our protective masks. This is precisely what has occurred. He no longer views himself as the pursuer, the one always maintaining control. He has begun recognizing his vulnerabilities. And rather than finding these weaknesses frightening, they're becoming his most authentically human qualities. The woman who departed with dignity, who made no demands, who created no dramatic scenes, now appears differently in his mind. She's no longer the unattainable object of desire. She's become the person who, without intention, revealed the value of his inner world. It's no longer about reconnecting with her. It's about understanding what she awakened within him. What captivated him wasn't her silence itself, but what that silence reflected: a woman who didn't require external validation to feel complete. A woman unwilling to compromise her peace for an incomplete connection. In a culture where men are conditioned to believe that love means possession, that connection equals control, this kind of feminine presence, one who loves from a place of freedom, represents an internal revolution. She cannot be manipulated. She cannot be possessed. She can only be genuinely appreciated. And this, ultimately, is what transforms him. He begins treating himself differently, listening more attentively to his own needs, no longer pursuing connection as desperate salvation. It's no longer about finding someone to accept him despite his emptiness, but about becoming someone who accepts himself honestly, creating authentic connection from that foundation. In this evolution, her memory softens. It no longer causes the same pain. She becomes a luminous memory, almost sacred, the one who, without intention, awakened his soul not to remain, but to illuminate his path forward. If you've ever felt your way of loving was misunderstood, if you chose to leave because staying would have meant betraying yourself, I want you to understand something important. These decisions create lasting impact. Perhaps no one acknowledged it. Perhaps he never fully comprehended it. But you planted something transformative, and that seed, even growing in silence, changed a life. Have you ever sensed that your energy left an impression on someone, even without intention? That your departure carried more significance than any forced presence could have? If so, please share your experience below. Your story might provide the catalyst someone else needs on their own journey. Eventually, obsession fades into something more meaningful: understanding. It's no longer about wanting her physically present. It's recognizing that she represented a pivotal turning point, marking a clear before and after, not through her words, but through her way of being and her manner of leaving. Psychology teaches that what moves us deeply remains within us as a symbol, and symbols don't fade with time. They don't require physical presence to continue influencing us. This explains her lasting impact. Though physically absent, her energy remains alive, like a melody that continues resonating long after the music ends. His perspective clarifies. He begins understanding that for years, he sought relationships where he felt validated, important, necessary. But with her, something different emerged. There was no desperate need, no struggle for control. There was conscious choice. This disarmed him completely because no one had shown him how to love from freedom rather than need. No one had demonstrated that vulnerability doesn't require sacrificing dignity, that being valued doesn't require being needed. She revealed this not through explanation but through presence, and ultimately through absence. Here, genuine transformation begins. He no longer seeks partners to fill internal emptiness. He no longer attempts to escape uncomfortable emotions through new distractions. He understands that authentic love isn't something demanded or earned. It's something shared from wholeness rather than lack. The most beautiful aspect is that she no longer needs to do anything. She doesn't need to return, explain herself, or prove anything. Her role has been fulfilled. She served as catalyst, as guiding light, as mirror. Her energy accomplished what was necessary. It awakened him to greater possibility. To those watching who recognize this dynamic, have you ever sensed that you initiated someone's emotional awakening, even if the relationship didn't continue? Did you perceive that something meaningful remained with them, even without verbal confirmation? If any part of this narrative resonates with your experience, please share below. Sometimes expressing our lived experience becomes the most powerful form of healing for ourselves and others. In this new chapter, he no longer runs from self-awareness. He understands that everything he sought in her, that tranquility, that depth, that freedom, he can develop within himself. Not immediately, not without effort, but with each conscious choice, he moves closer to authentic being. Interestingly, he no longer needs to find her qualities in someone else. When he remembers her presence in his life, it's not with regret, but with gratitude. Because she revealed that true love isn't about permanent possession. It's about meaningful impact. Where emptiness once dominated, understanding now resides. The pain has transformed. The anxious questions have resolved. A new perspective emerges, calmer, more honest, more awake. Because once someone crosses the threshold into genuine self-awareness, they can never love the same way again. Psychology affirms that what we accept within ourselves transforms us completely. This is precisely what has occurred. The man who once needed external validation to feel worthy now understands his value doesn't depend on being desired by others. It comes from authentic self-expression. He no longer connects from emptiness. He loves from wholeness. Her memory, that woman who never begged, who refused to remain where she wasn't truly seen, is no longer a source of pain. She has become a compass. Her memory, once painful, now illuminates his path because she wasn't ultimately a loss. She was a message, a lesson wrapped first in presence, then in absence. What appeared as an ending actually initiated a beginning. That connection, which concluded without dramatic promises or explanations, created space for something more significant. Transformation not of a relationship, but of consciousness. Because when someone touches your essence, their physical presence becomes secondary to what they awaken within you. And you, reading this from the other side of this story, you may never have known your true impact. You might have believed you departed unnoticed. But remember this truth. When you love from awareness, from dignity, from freedom, you always leave an impression, not on someone's ego, but on their soul. And that endures. And you who have experienced this transformation, perhaps now you understand it wasn't her you lost, but a part of yourself you hadn't yet embraced. Perhaps her departure wasn't an ending, but a doorway guiding you back to yourself. I invite you to share in the comments what this message stirred within you. Perhaps you've lived this story from either perspective. Perhaps you're the woman who knew when to release with dignity. Perhaps you're the man beginning to awaken. Whatever your experience, your voice might become the mirror someone else needs today. If this message resonated with you, please subscribe to this channel, activate notifications, and share this video with someone ready to love from a place of wholeness rather than need.